And we're here to explore reports. So as you can see, as this teacher, I've assigned a number of activities to students, and where applicable, the pre and the post test are showing. And I have these helpful documents here that hopefully I remembered to attach to my student activities when I assign them. So like I could push it out through Google Classroom or another LMS and then attach the rubrics there. And so those are always here in reports. And then we can view each individual assignment that we have assigned to students, or we can go over here and we can view these as a class. So I'm just gonna hop over here and we can look over the course of a school year to see how my students have progressed. And so this is pretty typical of what you would see. You'd see students do fairly well in flower, at least in the hypothesis phase, because it's just generally an easier lab for students to do because there's only 3 independent variables and there's just 2 levels of those. There's on and off, and there's no quantitative data. So it's fairly easy for students to do. So you tend to see a little bit of a higher score there. And then they move into phase change, and phase change is a bit tougher, so you tend to see a little bit of a fall back there in skills. And then they move into energy free fall, which is a little harder than phase change, but they're also starting to get better at their skills. And then we move into forces in motion, see some improvement. And then on to diversity of traits, they're improving even more. And then lunar phases, definitely some major improvement. And then on to ramps, which all of the students did fairly well. So this is pretty consistent with the actuality of what you see. So general growth, fallbacks, general growth again, and the importance of doing 7 or 8 activities and maybe even more across the course of a school year. Now, let's say I really wanted to dig into one of these a little bit more. So let's go into forces in motion. So in forces in motion, and by the way, these are all pretend student activities, is based on former students that are near and dear to my heart. I mixed some names and combined some names to have some student names for this example. And you can see how they did on hypothesis formation. And then let's go ahead and look at what those sub-skills are. Identifying the independent variable, identifying the dependent variable, and being goal aligned. Collecting data, so targeting the independent variable and controlling the investigation. Analyzing data, constructing the claim, and then warranting the claim. So can you choose the correct trials to support the claim that you just constructed? And then finally, the claim evidence reasoning. And hopefully they use that rubric. You can see whether Rex helped them or not. If you wanted to see their lab, you can actually just click on the paper icon. And that's exactly the same lab that students see when they finish. And students see this in stars. So they see 3 dark blue stars, which is proficient, 2 light blue stars, which is approaching proficiency, or orange, and that would be 1 orange star, and that's a novice level. So your students see stars when they finish, and then they can have a PDF of their lab, which I had my own students upload that to the LMS that I was using so that they could upload and then mark done, and maybe if I wanted them to attach a graph that they made. So you can see how the students are doing, which students are struggling, what skills they're struggling with. If it's helpful, you could have your students go ahead and you could download this as a spreadsheet if you wanted to be able to track their growth over time. That's sometimes an easier way is to look at all of the responses quickly in all of those responses really quickly in an Excel spreadsheet. Now, let's say that you wanted to look at individual student progress reports. This is really good when you're going to do progress reports, or if you have a parent who just really wants to keep regular track of what's going on with their student. It's nice to be able to pull up the progress report. Oh, and I use this for my student growth goals to be able to show that every single student had growth in their science practices across the course of the school year. And so it's really helpful to be able to pull this up and have a visual to be like, look, every single kid had growth, and you can even see it very visually here. So I had it via graph and via this visual representation. So that is very, very helpful to be able to have that. So 3 different ways you can look at your data. You can look at it by pulling up each individual assignment. You can view by class, or you can pull that up and you can view the individual student progress please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.